Well, let's see if I can figure it out. Na, 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 na. Yeah. Okay. Oh, I hate that that's my first stream because that's actually embarrassing. Ooh. Hey, I can see it from my phone. I'm such a child. Okay. I'm using my phone to look at any chats or any new stuff. Also, I want to make sure I'm coming across right. Actually, yo, my webcam on my laptop actually doesn't look that bad. I might have to start using that. I did not set up my Canon camera because I didn't plan this, and I also don't feel like setting it up right now. So there we go. So I am just going to be watching. I'm literally talking to nobody right now, but maybe somebody will watch this, and I'll end up putting it on YouTube anyway. And TikTok, Instagram, all that. Um, so I'm literally just watching some true crime videos and chilling and hanging out. And whoever wants to come hang, feel free to hang. Let's watch.
Several years ago, prank videos were huge on YouTube. Basically, a prank YouTube channel would go out in public and they would do something to some unsuspecting person and they would film it, and that video would get tons of views on YouTube. Well, during this prank heyday, there was one YouTube channel that pulled off a prank that really stood out amongst the thousands and thousands of others that were getting pumped out during this time. And the reason this particular prank stood out was because, one, it was masterfully planned, two, it was brilliantly executed, and three, most memorably, it had massive intended and unintended consequences. We're talking international scandal level consequences. And amazingly, this story has yet to be converted into a major motion picture, and so I would imagine that most of you have actually never heard of it. But before we get into that story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload once a week. So if that's of interest to you, please go in to the like button cell phone and change their emergency contact to Papa John's. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into today's story.
Pause. I'm trying to figure out how to share this on my Instagram. I don't know what I'm doing. How does this work? How does it work? How does it work? How does it work? How does it work? That is not what I want to do, actually. But now my friend knows that I'm live. Oh, I don't know. I guess I just take a picture. Can I screenshot it? That's not fun. Hold on. How do I open? Ooh. Oh, it doesn't even show. Boo. Not that I need that, but whatever. It's fine. We'll go back.
Level consequences. And amazingly, this story has yet to be converted into a major motion picture, and so I would imagine that most of you have actually never heard of it. But before we get into that story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload once a week. So if that's of interest to you, please go in to the like button cell phone and change their emergency contact to Papa John's. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into today's story.
You be having the best theme music. Oh no, wait. I want like a, yeah.
On the night of February 12th, 2017, a young woman named Sidi Aisha saw something coming over to her that surprised her so much that she gasped and she put her drink down on the bar. The bar she was at was called the Hard Rock Cafe in Kuala Lumpur, which is the capital city of Malaysia. This night for Sidi had already been one of the best in recent memory, but now it was getting even better because a waitress was walking over to her carrying a birthday cake with a candle lit in the middle, and Sidi knew it was for her. So she stepped forward kind of bashfully, and all of Sidi's friends who were there with her kind of formed up around her, and as the waitress came over to Sidi, the friends all immediately began singing happy birthday to Sidi. It was Sidi's 25th birthday, and she could not believe how far she had come. Here she was in this beautiful American-styled restaurant, surrounded by her friends, who were these big TV show producers, and tonight they were throwing a party for her, something that did not happen often in Sidi's life to this point. After Sidi's friends finished singing happy birthday, Sidi leaned forward and she blew out her candle, but she didn't even make a wish before she blew it out, because to her, she felt like she had everything she had ever wanted. And so instead, as she blew that candle out, she just made a point to feel incredibly grateful for the life that she now had. Because not long ago, Sidi's life looked very different. Sidi had grown up in a tiny town inside of a jungle in Indonesia. She was the youngest of 3 children, and her parents were very poor farmers that barely made enough money to provide shelter and food for their kids. In fact, Sidi's parents were so poor that they couldn't afford to send her to high school. They needed her to stay home and go to work to help support the family. Sidi would end up getting married, and she would have a son with her husband, but her husband would divorce her and not provide any support for their kid. And so suddenly Sidi was the single mother trying to look out for her son while also trying to provide for her parents and her other siblings. And eventually it became so difficult to find enough work to provide for all these people that Sidi was forced to go abroad and look for work elsewhere outside of Indonesia, which meant she had to leave behind not only her parents and siblings, but also her son. Her son had to stay with her parents. Sidi would ultimately find work as a masseuse in a hotel in Malaysia called the Flamingo. Now, Sidi really did not like this work at all, but it paid well enough and she needed the money badly enough that she decided to just keep on doing it. Sometimes Sidi, like a lot of the other girls that she worked with at the hotel, would daydream about being discovered as a model or a singer or an actress and getting taken away from this life to a life of luxury and wealth and leisure. But Sidi never really expected that to happen. Next to Sidi at the bar was her producer, whose name was James. And James had his arm around her, and he suddenly flashed her his cell phone, and he kind of pointed to the screen. And Sidi looked at it, and she saw there was a text message from someone, but it was in a language that she didn't recognize. And she asked James, what is that? And James grinned at her and said, "This is my boss telling me that you are already a superstar in Korea." And when Sidi heard this, she was totally embarrassed, but also really excited. Sidi had met James about a month ago in January of 2017 when Sidi and some of her friends from the hotel had decided to go out for the night. Now, Sidi very rarely went out. She basically worked and slept and then sent home her money to her family. But for whatever reason, she had been convinced by her friends to go out and have a good time. And so she was all dolled up, and she and her friends were standing in line to get into a bar when a very handsome man wearing a suit, James, walked up to Sidi and said, "Have you done any acting?" And Sidi, wearing her best clothes with her friends, she suddenly felt bold, and she told this guy, who she didn't know, that, "No, I haven't, but I'd like to try." And so James asked her if she'd come with him, and she said okay, and they went to this cafe, and they sat down, got coffees, and James explained to Sidi who he was. And he told her he was a Japanese television producer who specialized in hidden camera prank videos. And he needed actresses to put on pretty clothes and pull pranks on unsuspecting people on camera. Sidi had initially been very skeptical of James and this proposition, but at the same time, back then, prank videos were all the rage on YouTube, they were on mainstream TV, they were everywhere, and Sidi knew that, but she had never thought about being in one. She just sometimes liked to watch them. But James would tell her, "This is really easy work, and you'll get paid well for it." And so City had ultimately said, okay, yeah, I'll do it with you. And after she said yes, her life had been a whirlwind. No longer was she a masseuse at a hotel, but instead she was like a celebrity, flying all over the country, filming all these prank videos, and James's bosses were so pumped, they kept messaging him, telling him how amazing she was, and how every video she was doing was outperforming anything they hoped it could do. I mean, everything was going perfectly. City took a few more bites of her birthday cake, and then she checked her watch and saw it was almost 10 p.m., which for James and her other friends might be early, but for City, that was pretty late. Plus, she had already had a lot of alcohol that night, and so that was making her more tired. And so she told James and the others she was going to leave. She thanked them for the party, and then she headed out and went to her hotel. As soon as City was in her room, she immediately called her mother. City and her mom talked all the time, sometimes multiple times a day, and this night, City just really missed her mom, and she really missed her son. And as soon as she called her mom picked up and they chatted for a bit. And City told her all about how she'd had this amazing birthday party and how excited she was about the next day because they were shooting a really big prank. It was going to be their biggest one yet, and it would have the biggest payout of any of the videos she had done so far. This one, tomorrow, was going to pay her $100. And City told her mom, don't worry, I'm sending all of it back home to you all. City's mother was so thankful and so excited for her daughter, and she said, that's wonderful, get a good night's sleep, and I'll be thinking of you tomorrow. And after that,
Real quick, I feel like a lot of the prank videos nowadays are just getting way out of hand. You know, isn't there like a couple of pranksters who are in prison now, or like getting charged with some serious stuff because they took the pranks too seriously or like way too far? Yeah.
that City talked to her son for a couple of seconds, and then they hung up, and City crawled into bed, she turned off the light, and she tried to sleep, but she couldn't. She was too excited about tomorrow's shoot. She and James had been talking about this particular prank for the last week, and they'd been rehearsing it over and over again, and now here she was on the precipice of actually doing it in real life. The pranks that City did were all pretty similar and pretty simple. She and James would go to some train station or some hotel or some other public area, and they would identify an unsuspecting older man, and then City, all dressed up, would go up to this guy while she was being filmed at a distance, and she would either kiss the man on the cheek or spray him with perfume or rub chili oil on his hand, and then she would giggle and run away, and then the camera crew would zoom in on the man's face as he's kind of bewildered and trying to figure out why that had just happened. But tomorrow's prank, even though it was pretty similar to the one she had done, it would be the first time she'd be working with another actor. In fact, two other actors. One of the actors was a woman who would be doing the pranking with City, and then their target, the unsuspecting man, was also an actor. James and the Japanese television production company had insisted that for this prank to work, this guy really did need to be in on it. City had already met and rehearsed a couple of times with the other woman who she'd be doing this prank with, but she had not met the third actor, the unsuspecting man, yet. She'd be meeting him the next day, actually during the prank. City would eventually fall asleep that night, and then her alarm would go off fairly early the next morning, and when it did, City immediately got out of bed and she got dressed in a dark form-fitting outfit. She put on some red lipstick, and then she hustled out of her room, downstairs, and out of the hotel to meet James, the woman actress she'd be working with that day, and the other producers who were involved in the production. Then, as a big group, they hopped in a cab and went to the international airport where this big prank was going to take place. And when they got there, they made their way to a restaurant in the departures area to wait for the third actor, the unsuspecting man, to show up so they could begin the shoot. And while they waited, City and the other actress she'd be working with struck up a conversation. The other actress's name was Duan Thi Huang, and she was a 28-year-old woman from Vietnam. And just like City, she had come from a poor family, and she had gone abroad to find work to help support her family, and it was during this time that she was abroad that she was recruited to star in these prank videos. But unlike City, who daydreamed about maybe being a singer or a model or an actress or something someday, for Doan, Acting was the only thing she ever thought of. Her whole life, the only thing she ever wanted was to be an actress. In fact, Do-won had left school to pursue a career in show business. She had been on a show called Vietnam Idol, but unfortunately did not make it past the first round. And she had actually done a few other prank videos with a different production company, but neither of those two ventures had ever really panned out. It wasn't until she was recruited by James and his team to be a part of these videos that Do-won finally felt like she was on the right track. And as they talked, City couldn't help but feel like Do-won was just a little bit weird. She did like Do-won, she had no issues with her, but Do-won had chose to wear, for this big shoot today, a very childish